Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Spoiler alert. Many monsters and creatures from Greek mythology can be found in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, which helps the Disney Plus series with its amazing world building. Because of the magical worlds that both Percy Jackson and Harry Potter depict, there has always been a lot of comparison between the two book series. The universe set in the first Percy Jackson book, The Lightning Thief, is brought to life in grand fashion with Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The cast of Percy Jackson and the Olympians not only flawlessly captures the essence of the characters in the novel, but the series' tone, aesthetic, and appearance also enable an accurate recreation of the Greek-infused setting. The show's monsters and creatures, from Percy Jackson's pantheon of Greek gods to the mythology-based monsters present throughout the Disney Plus adaptation, are a significant means of achieving this. The collection of Greek mythological monsters and animals will only increase as Percy Jackson and the Olympians incorporate more aspects of the well-loved book series by Rick Riordan. The Pegasus at first appeared in the episode I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. In Percy Jackson Episode 1, a Pegasus is seen extending its wings on a rooftop. The sighting of a Pegasus serves as the first clue to the audience and the title character that creatures from Greek mythology are part of the Percy Jackson universe. In the first scene of the first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Percy describes the moments in his early years when he first noticed clues that he was half-blood. The first of these occurs when a mystery entity entices a young Percy to the school's roof. This is Pegasus, one of the most famous beasts in Greek mythology, I think. Greek mythology has evolved over time, but the general consensus is that the Pegasus was a creature conceived by Medusa and the sea deity Poseidon. The Pegasus was a unique species in classic Greek mythology, but Percy Jackson and the Olympians give the creature a race of its own, from the Pegasi in the wild to the ones maintained at Camp Half-Blood for use by demigods. An automaton of rhinos it first appeared in the episode I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. In the first episode of Percy Jackson, an automaton rhino is shown traversing New York. An automaton is another entity that Percy first encounters in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Greek mythology described automatons as mechanical entities made of metal, wood, or stone that could carry out predetermined tasks for the gods or other creators. Automatons are claimed to have been created by mythological figures such as Hephaestus, one of the gods, or Daedalus, one of the inventors. The Percy Jackson books feature this kind of creature. The automatons feature in Percy Jackson and the Olympians as well, considering how faithfully the program follows its original source material. There is another glimpse of Percy's early years just after he spots the Pegasus in Episode 1. While in class, Percy is gazing out the window at a massive mechanical rhino that is making its way along a busy street in New York. The automatons are real and will play a crucial role in later Percy Jackson and the Olympians books, but Percy quickly comes to believe it is just a garbage truck due to the mist, the magical veil that separates the mythological and human worlds. The Fury. Alecto at first appeared in the episode I Accidentally Vaporized My Pre-Algebra Teacher of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Alecto in the first episode of Percy Jackson, standing over Percy. A montage depicts Percy's meetings with Pegasus and automatons, but the first real monster he fights is a Fury, one of the most formidable creatures in Greek mythology. The three Furies from Greek mythology tormented humanity for a variety of transgressions, including murder. Using this idea, Percy Jackson and the Olympians create the Furies as defenders of the underworld, a place where wicked people are condemned to an endless state of torment after death. Alecto, one of the three Furies, is encountered by Percy in the first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. At first, Alecto poses as Percy's pre-algebra teacher. Mrs. Dodds Alecto makes her appearance when Percy unintentionally displays his demigod abilities by forcing a bully at school into a fountain with water. Mrs. Dodds gives Fury its leathery wings and avian traits, then asks Percy to find an object that neither he nor the audience can identify. With the sword Mr. Brunner gave him, Percy killed her out of reflex before collapsing and dreaming that the incident never happened. Throughout all 5 of Percy Jackson's books, the Furies pose a constant menace, which also applies to Disney's Percy Jackson and the Olympians. The first appearance of the Minotaur was in the first episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. I Accidentally Vaporized surprised my pre-algebra teacher. The first appearance of the Minotaur in the Rain in Percy Jackson Episode 1. The Minotaur is one of the more formidable monsters that Percy first encounters on his adventure. Once Percy learns the truth about his half-blood heritage, the Minotaur is dispatched to attack him. Before the Minotaur transports Percy's mother to the underworld, it attacks their automobile while he, his mother Sally, and their friend Grover are making their way to Camp Half-Blood. Enraged, Percy cuts off the Minotaur's horn with his sword and then uses the appendage to kill the creature. Greek mythology described the Minotaur as a monstrosity that was half bull and half man. The Minotaur possessed a very bull-like head, complete with curled horns and a studded snout, but had a clearly human torso. In Greek mythology, the creature guarded the labyrinth and lived in the middle of the enormous maze until being slain by the brave Theseus. The Minotaur, who is the second notable monster that Percy defeats in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, is still a part of the book series and is probably going to stay that way in the Disney version as well. In Percy Jackson and the Olympians, satyrs are among the more charitable creatures of Greek mythology, much like the Pegasus. Percy's best friend Grover is actually the first satyr that is seen. Younger satyrs in Percy Jackson's universe serve as protectors, which means they patrol the human realm in search of possible half-bloods. When half-bloods discover who they really are, protectors are sent to bring these kids to Camp Half-Blood so they can get training and protection. Grover is thus revealed to be Percy's protector in Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Episode 1. Greek mythology gives satyrs a distinctive appearance since they are half goat and half man. The question of whether satyrs had human or goat legs is a recurring theme in Greek mythology, but goat horns and tails have always been associated with them. Satyrs are depicted in Percy Jackson and the Olympians as having goat legs and human upper bodies except for the horns on top of their heads. Greek mythology rarely shows satyrs with any grace. Instead, they are typically portrayed as lovers of risque humor and as a burden on ancient Greek civilization. This is altered by Percy Jackson and the Olympians, elevating satyrs to a position of prominence in the fantasy realm. Satyrs are extremely important to the survival of half-bloods and the preservation of nature in contemporary America, both because of their protector function and some hidden agendas that are exposed later in the novel. One of the three main protagonists of the series, Grover, leads this in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Centaurs are Greek legendary animals that symbolize a human-animal combination, much like satyrs and minotaurs. Centaurs are shown as being half horse and half human, with a man's head and torso and a horse's body and legs. In Greek mythology, centaurs were mainly portrayed as being as untamed as wild horses, prowling the landscape in herds. Greek mythology, however, portrays Chiron as one centaur who is far more collected, stoic, and helpful than his fellows. Chiron, who appears in Percy Jackson and the Olympians for the first time, is none other than Mr. Brunner, Percy's Latin instructor at Yancey Academy. Chiron serves as a tutor to the protagonists of Camp Half-Blood, drawing influence from the Greek figure of the same name. Percy Jackson's Chiron helps the people at Camp Half-Blood and shapes them into heroes capable of navigating the perilous world of Greek gods and monsters alone. Much as the Chiron from real-life Greek myth helped to train well-known ancient heroes like Achilles and Jason, the gods themselves are one of the various sentient beings from mythology that Percy Jackson and the Olympians encounter. The director of Camp Half-Blood, Mr. D/Dionysus, is the first god introduced in the program. Sometime between antiquity and the events of Percy Jackson, Zeus punished Dionysus by having him run Camp Half-Blood with reluctance and be forbidden from consuming alcohol. Although Dionysus is not a big character in the first two episodes of Percy Jackson, he will still be around in subsequent episodes. Wood nymph/dryad. A number of additional species from Percy Jackson and the Olympians universe are shown when Percy first arrives at Camp Half-Blood. Among them is the wood nymph, sometimes called the dryad. Grover meets a dryad at Camp Half-Blood as the satyr meets with the Cloven Council. Greek mythology describes nymphs as small nature deities that symbolize particular elements of the natural world. This kind of nymph, in relation to dryads, is the spirit of the trees. Dryads were frequently portrayed as being connected to the life power of a particular tree and living in God's holy groves, like Percy Jackson and the Cloven Council of the Olympians. One of the three Greek goddesses from antiquity is Medusa. Medusa is one of the ancient Greek monsters that is first shown in the third episode of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Being a Gorgon, Medusa was cursed by Athena to have snakes for hair that could turn anyone into stone. In Percy Jackson Episode 3, it is revealed that Medusa was used by Poseidon out of selfishness, making this a harsh act of injustice from the gods. Because Medusa was punished by Athena for Poseidon's harsh actions, Medusa became a more likable figure than many initially believed. Percy killed Medusa because she started to think of him as his father's son and wanted to exact revenge on the sea deity. The Greek god of messengers and travelers, Hermes, Hermes, the second Greek god of the series, is presented at the conclusion of Percy Jackson in the Olympians, Episode 3. Luke Castellan's father, Hermes, is shown as sending the head of Medusa to Mount Olympus after Percy mailed it to the gods as a gesture of both rebellion and homage. Hermes is portrayed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Hermes has a small part, but because he serves as the Olympian god's glorified postman, his lackey nature is brought to light. As Percy Jackson and the Olympians go on, Hermes and a number of other Greek gods, monsters, and animals will make more appearances.